Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this week's episode of The Contented Narrative. We will be looking at Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. It was obviously published in 1934. It has been adapted several times to screen, but I will be looking at the 2017 version. As usual, I will be looking at three things: how good is the book, how good is the film, and how well does the plot take from the book. So let's start with the film. This film has such an amazing cast to it, and also has such an amazing mustache in it as well. I mean, obviously the main actor is just brilliant. He will always be Gilderoy Lockhart to me. I mean, I know he's been in loads of things, and he's a phenomenal director, but he is a very good Poirot, and I do enjoy it. Now, I knew who the killers were, but that is literally only because I have watched adaptations of Murder on the Orient Express before. So I knew, spoiler alert, the plot twist that everybody is the killer, essentially. But it just gets you from the very start. So the film does start with Poirot ending a previous case and then going on this journey to end up on the Orient Express, where another murder is committed, and just by pure chance, a snowfall has stranded the train. So this leads him to conclude that it has to have been someone on the train. I mean, the suspense is beautifully done, and despite me constantly laughing at the moustache whenever Poirot comes on stage, it is a beautifully large moustache. I love the little eccentricities that are shown. I love how he embodies the character. Admittedly, he isn't how the character is described in books. In books, he's described as being sort of short, bald, and he's not that in the film. But I do love how they've got I can't speak today, the eccentricities of the character, and how he wants to just have a holiday and somehow always ends up solving a crime. But this crime as well, I love how it shakes him to his core beliefs, because for him, if someone is killed, someone has murdered them, that person is guilty. But as we'll find out when I discuss the plots, in this one, the guy that's killed is just what he's done to deserve this kind of sits with Poirot as obviously he's not condoning that murder's a good thing, but will he really send down all these innocent people to jail for this? So, I mean, I also want to go on the Orient Express at some point in my life. There's a lot of to-dos that I want to do, but it gets an 8 out of 10 for me, does the film. It is very enjoyable. Now, this book is short and sweet. For some unknown reason, I assumed that this book would be a lot longer than it actually was. And I have the audacity to say I didn't actually read an Agatha Christie book. Well, I had, but I can't remember which one it was, and it was years ago. But I hadn't actually read Murder on the Orient Express until my lovely husband, and ironically the birthday club at my work as well, both got me a version, both got me the book. So it was kind of a hint that, I should maybe do some Agatha Christie. So I only really read it the other month, as it's the first time I kind of had it. And I must admit, I love the writing style. And I mean, it's aged so well, has the book. And when I was reading it, I wasn't jilted out of the characters. I wasn't struggling with the language, with the linguistics behind it. It was really good, and it was nice and easy to follow. Now, obviously, again, I love how they reveal how everyone connects with everyone. And I love the little bits throughout. And again, I knew who the killers were. So going in, but I honestly, hold my hand up, I don't think I would have guessed that everyone was the killer if I didn't already know. Because it was so brilliantly written, and the small reveals kind of make you go, oh, it's got to be this person, this person. And when it's actually revealed and you're like, I did not see that coming. And when everyone is connected with everybody, and it's about the murder of this child, Daisy Armstrong. And it's just so beautifully done, honestly. Agatha Christie, I take my hat off. Fantastic writer. So I say that this has aged so well. So it gets a 9 out of 10 for me, does the book. So let's go with the plot. So the plot of the book, it starts with Poirot being seen off onto the train from Aleppo to Istanbul by a delegate of the French army. And on this train, he comes across a colonel from India and Miss Debenham. Now, the film, as I said before, starts with him solving a previous case, then wanting to travel to have a holiday, where he comes across the doctor and Miss Debenham on a boat. Now, the colonel in the book and the Doctor in the film are the exact same character. So that, you know, what pushes them, their motivations and everything, is the exact same character. But there is an additional character of the Doctor in the book that we don't see in the film. So his name is Abernot. I think Abath. I'm going to say Abernot. So that's what I will be saying is Abernot rather than the Colonel or the Doctor, because it's the same person. So in both, the two passengers obviously know each other, but they pretend that they don't know each other, and Poirot picks up on this. And in both, Poirot was not actually due to go aboard the Orient Express, but was called on urgent matters to then travel on the Orient Express and was asked to book a ticket straight away. And in both, he's helped by Bock, who is a friend of Poirot's and who runs the train. Now, again, in the film, Bock is like a youngish, rogue kind of gentleman, you know, classically all right looking. In the book, he is described as being pretty much the same as Poirot, short, bald, older. Now, again, so while trying to get Poirot onto the train, we get a sense of Mr. Ratchet as well, who is like a wild, savage animal behind an American personality. And Mr. Ratchet is the one that we need to watch. He's the one that's going to die. Sorry. So we're able to get Poirot on the train, but he's sharing a compartment at first with Mr. McQueen, which isn't ideal, but he puts up with it, so that's fine. Now, in the film, while getting on board and going through the carriages, that's when we meet all the players, as it were, in this game. But in the book, it's a slow meet of each of them, rather than everyone meeting Poirot pretty much almost instantaneously. We do get a thorough description of everyone, though, when Poirot is in the dining car with his fellow Bock. So we do get a thorough description in the book. We just sort of see it a bit more in the film. Now, in both, Ratchet knows who Poirot is and asks him to keep him safe. However, Poirot declines the job. And now at this point, Poirot has been given his own compartment as well. So he's closer to Mr. Ratchet. He's no longer sharing with Mr. McQueen. So as he's heading to bed, Mrs. Hubbard accosts him in the corridor, as it were, and mentions that she doesn't trust Mr. Ratchet and doesn't trust him being next door to her. And obviously Poirot's like, oh, you know, sorry about that. And over the course of the night, several things sort of wake Poirot. And the train also ends up in a snowdrift. So far, it is quite similar from the book and the film. Now, this is where we kind of get a little bit different. So in the book, he heads to the dining car where everyone is worried about catching their connections. And in the film, as he passes Ratchet's room, straight away they break in and find him dead. So the book is a little bit later. In the film, it's pretty much straight away they find Ratchet dead. But in both, once Poirot learns of the death, Bock actually asks him to take up the investigation, which he does accept. So he talks to McQueen first, who informs Poirot of the threatening letters that Ratchet has been receiving. And then Poirot goes to examine the body in the room. So in the room, he's confused by the abundance of clues that is around. And this can point to many different perpetrators, and he's trying to figure out who's trying to throw him off the case. So you've got things that go with smoking a pipe. You've got a lady's handkerchief with the letter H on it. And so he's thinking, is it a man that did this and then left the woman's thing? Is it a woman that did this and left the man's thing? And so on and so forth. And you also have as well the smash watch, which indicates the time of death. Or so you would think. And it's a setup as well to make everyone believe that it's an outsider that actually killed him. He does, however, see a scrap of paper, which I'm guessing, well, I'm not guessing, I know he's not supposed to have seen. And with the scrap of paper, it reveals the real name of the murdered man, which was Cassetti. And the reason for the murder of him was that he killed a 3-year-old girl called Daisy Armstrong in a kidnapping going wrong quite a few years ago, in a ransom gone wrong. And this destroyed the family. The mum, who was pregnant at the time, Daisy Armstrong's mum, went into premature labour, and unfortunately she and the baby didn't survive. The father shot himself because he'd lost everything, and in a rush to get the conviction, they accused a maid of being innocent and she then killed herself because she knew that it wasn't. They accused the maid, but she was innocent, and she then killed herself. And then in the book, you've got evidence brought forward that it was Cassetti. And he gets off on a technicality and he leaves for America. In the film, when the evidence comes forward that it was Cassetti, it's too late and he's fled already. So in the book, as I said, the Doctor is an independent person. In the film, he is a suspect. So Poirot continues with his interviews of the suspects, but now with the knowledge of who Cassetti really is. So McQueen and Masterman, who worked for him, say they disliked him as Cassetti was not a nice man, so they're not trying to hide anything. And in the film, Masterman has a serious illness that Poirot discovers in the first interview. However, that's not really the case in the book. He doesn't really have this underlying illness. Everyone else claims to not know who Cassetti is. So Mrs. Hubbard tells Poirot about the man she was sure was in her room last night, and even brings forth a button that fell from the staff's uniform as proof that someone was in her room. But then we learn that Princess Dragmirov was the godmother to Sonia Armstrong, and that's the mother who died in childbirth. So Poirot then continues to interview suspects every now and then. He gleans something more of what's happened. When he's interviewing Mr. Hardman, in the book, he reveals he's a Pinkerton detective, and he actually turns out to just be a Pinkerton detective. In the film, it goes one step further. So he used to be a detective on the Armstrong case, and then we even find out, that he was the partner of the disgraced maid who killed herself. So now that's 2 connections in the film, but only 1 connection in the book. So Poirot then interviews Miss Debenham, who he regards with very high regard, but also with very high suspicion. He believes that she's the ringleader of it all. But with each interview, he's getting more confused as there's 2 descriptions that keep circulating. A woman in a red kimono and an additional conductor, both who appear to have vanished into thin air. So at this point as well in the film, Poirot has searched the luggage and found the red kimono in his luggage and the conductor's uniform in the handmaiden's cabin. And the handmaiden is Princess Dragmirov's handmaiden. In the book, Mrs. Hubbard finds the knife in her sponge bag. In the film, she's stabbed in the back with it, literally. So in the book now, they start the search of the luggage, but with the same results as with the film. So the handmaiden has the conductor's uniform, and the red kimono is found in Poirot's cabin. Now in the film, we get a chase between McQueen and Poirot as he tries to burn documents, showing that he was skimming off the top of Cassetti's accounts. We don't really see that in the book. But in both, Poirot starts to sit back and be methodical about everything that has gone down and kind of making like a timeline, as it were. So in the film, before he gets there, he's shot by Abenot, whatever. Not mortally, but in the arm, as Poirot is talking once again to Miss Debenham, and it's quite clear that those 2 are an item. So then he figures out that the Countess, who was like kind of hiding in the train, is Sonia's younger sister. Then we find out is Miss Debenham was Daisy Armstrong's nanny. The Italian who was bunking with Mr. McQueen was the Armstrong chauffeur. The devout Christian turns out to be Daisy Armstrong's nurse. Masterman was the father's Batman during the war, and then he's valet in America. Hardman ends up, as I said earlier, the boyfriend of the deceased maid, but in the book you don't really get that. McQueen is the son of the disgraced DA who also ended his life because of the death of the maid he feels responsible for in the film. But in the book, he was simply a huge admirer of Sonia's, is McQueen. The other conductor, Pierre Michel, was the brother of the dead maid in the film, but he was the father of the dead maid in the book. And Abenot knew Armstrong from the army, and Armstrong was the reason that Abenot was able to become a doctor, because he is black. In both the book and the film, and obviously back then that would have been a hindrance. So Armstrong has looked after his career. Mrs. Hubbard turns out to be Daisy's grandmother. And so then you realise that everyone has a motive and everyone is involved, basically. So here we get Poirot giving his 2 theories. So the first one is there an outside murderer who got on board, killed Cassetti and got away. The second one is the work of everyone aboard the train who all had a motive as they were all related in some way to and had their lives shattered by the death of Daisy Armstrong and the consequent death of the rest of the Armstrong family. So the book ends with Mrs. Hubbard revealing all, and Poirot, Bock, and the Doctor agreeing on theory 1, because they don't want to disgrace anyone and they decide to let these people go on their way. In the film, it ends with Poirot giving Mrs. Hubbard a gun to use on him because he says, I'm going to tell everybody what this is. However, she doesn't. She tries to use it on herself, but Poirot hasn't put bullets in it. But this then pushes him to the fact that they wouldn't have killed Cassetti if they didn't have to, basically. So he then decides to go with theory 1 as well in the film, and then at the next stop he gets off the train, and then he's sort of heading off to Death on the Nile, which I'm looking forward to should it eventually come out. So both narratives are very close to each other. The characters, the connections, the murder, who the murderers are. The film did add a few more action points, and it did make Aber not the Doctor. Plus, it seemed to cast actors who are not how the characters are described, which is, you know, which I get for cinema purposes. So they did have a couple of chase scenes and heist scenes, and, you know, started off quite, but you have to keep the attention of the audience, and the audiences nowadays love flash and bang. However, overall, I think the story kept it quite faithful. The twist was exactly the same. And I think it gets a 6 out of 10 for me. Obviously, this is my own opinion. If you agree or disagree with anything that I say, please do leave it below in the comments. I'm more than happy to have discussions with you. Join me on the Contented Narrative group on Facebook. Follow me on the Contented Narrative on Instagram. You know, I've still got quite a few branded bookmarks to sell as well. But I'm happy with all the support that you guys have been giving me. So thank you so much. And tell everybody, just, you know, tell everybody about this. But thank you so much for all the continued support. And just remember, guys, always keep it contento.